guys can put whatever label you want on me. I don't really give a shit.
When wrestling legends like Brock Lesnar sound this pissed as they address the WWE, you know it's serious. For years, they've complained in secret, but now they're speaking out, and the things they're exposing has the WWE running damage control. Let's get right into it. When the legends become critics. Professional wrestling has always been a world where generations clash, where different philosophies about what makes great wrestling collide in spectacular fashion. But what's happening in 2025 is something unprecedented, something that should make every WWE fan sit up and pay attention. The very legends who built WWE into the global phenomenon it is today are speaking out with voices that can no longer be ignored. And what they're saying is deeply troubling for anyone who loves this business. We're not talking about bitter has-beens or wrestlers who never made it big looking for attention. We're talking about Bret the Hitman Hart, Ric Flair, Jim Cornette, Vince Russo, names that are synonymous with wrestling's greatest eras. These are the men who created the template, who filled arenas, who made wrestling matter. And now they're telling us, loudly and clearly, that modern WWE has lost something essential, something that made wrestling special in the first place. Let's start with Bret Hart, because when the excellence of execution speaks, the wrestling world listens. This is a man who was trained in one of the most brutal, most legitimate wrestling environments ever created, the Hart Dungeon, where his father Stu Hart turned out some of the greatest technical wrestlers the industry has ever seen. Bret didn't learn wrestling as entertainment first and combat second. He learned it the other way around, mastering holds and counters and the art of making everything look devastatingly real while protecting your opponent. His matches weren't collections of high spots and near falls. They were stories told through pain and perseverance, where every move built on what came before, where the psychology was so tight you could follow the entire narrative just by watching the action. When Bret sits down with MMA journalist Ariel Helwani in April 2025 and says that modern wrestling has become actors pretending to be wrestlers, it's not just an old man yelling at clouds. It's a devastating indictment from someone who understands wrestling at a molecular level. Hart specifically called out AEW's roster, but he made it crystal clear that WWE suffers from the same disease. Today's wrestlers lack the foundational mat skills, the understanding of wrestling psychology, the ability to tell stories through holds and selling rather than through gymnastics and obviously choreographed sequences. Hart doubled down in August 2025 with PW Mania, emphasizing how modern matches ignore wrestling psychology, that crucial art of building drama through logical progression, making audiences believe what they're watching matters, selling moves so convincingly that people suspend their disbelief, even though they know the outcomes are predetermined. Taz backed Hart's perspective in August 2025, echoing the frustration with wrestlers enduring legitimate pain without any narrative payoff, calling it a shortcut that undermines long-term storytelling. For Hart, modern WWE's emphasis on athleticism, those high spots from talents like Ricochet, those celebrity crossovers with Logan Paul doing backflips, dilutes the excellence he championed throughout his career. Now let's talk about Ric Flair, because the Nature Boy brings a completely different perspective to this same fundamental problem. If Bret Hart is wrestling's technical philosopher, Ric Flair is its flamboyant showman, the man whose entire legendary career was built on spontaneity, on reading crowds and calling matches in real time, on the principle that wrestling should feel alive and unpredictable rather than rehearsed and choreographed. In January 2025, Flair told Ringside News that practicing matches is the only thing in the business that I can't stand right now, arguing that it strips away the improvisational magic that made his promos and brawls legendary. "I've had no practice," Flair declared proudly, and he meant it as the ultimate compliment to his generation's approach. They didn't choreograph every spot and rehearse every sequence until it was perfect. They learned a vocabulary of moves, developed an intuitive understanding of crowd psychology, and then went out there and created their matches in the moment, calling spots on the fly, adjusting based on what was working and what wasn't. That approach produced some of wrestling's most memorable moments precisely because they couldn't be replicated. When Flair and Ricky Steamboat had their legendary series of matches in 1989, no two were exactly alike despite following similar story beats. When he brawled with Dusty Rhodes in bloody, violent affairs that felt genuinely dangerous, the chaos was real because it wasn't mapped out spot by spot. Flair's frustration reached a boiling point in September 2025 when he dismissed comparisons between himself and current stars like Gunther, claiming modern standards have plummeted to insulting levels. And we can't forget Vince Russo, the Attitude Era architect who helped transform WWE into a cultural phenomenon during the late 1990s. As head writer, Russo was instrumental in creating that edgy, unpredictable, anything-can-happen product that made WWE the dominant force in entertainment. He helped craft Stone Cold Steve Austin's rebellious persona, the raunchy storylines that pushed boundaries, the worked shoot promos that blurred reality and fiction. Now, watching what WWE has become, Russo tells the Times of India in May 2025 that Triple H's creative reign is stale, specifically criticizing decisions like Roman Reigns' prolonged bloodline saga for lacking the shocking swerves and unpredictable twists that defined his era. Russo doubled down in an October 2025 Facebook post, labeling modern pro wrestling safe, censored, same old, boring, predictable, while praising edgier independent promotions like Juggalo Championship Wrestling, where he's currently booking. Russo's central argument is that WWE's transformation from TV-14 to PG programming in 2008 wasn't just a rating change, it was a philosophical shift that fundamentally altered what wrestling could be. The Attitude Era wasn't edgy for shock value alone. The content was edgy because it reflected the actual attitudes and interests of its audience. People wanted to see anti-authority rebels like Stone Cold flip off their bosses because many viewers felt similarly frustrated with their own jobs and authority figures. They wanted risque storylines and adult-oriented content because wrestling was finally treating its audience like adults rather than children. Modern WWE, in Russo's view, has traded that rebellion for respectability, that authenticity for advertiser-friendly content that offends no one and excites no one. The irony he points out is that WWE is more financially successful than ever under this approach. The TKO merger, the Netflix deal, the Saudi Arabian contracts represent billions of dollars. But Russo's counter-argument is that financial success measured in corporate terms doesn't equal creative success or cultural relevance. The Attitude Era was a cultural phenomenon that transcended wrestling. It was referenced in mainstream media. Its catchphrases entered popular lexicon. Its stars became household names. Modern WWE might have better distribution and more revenue streams, but it no longer has that same cultural cachet or ability to create moments that matter beyond the wrestling bubble. What emerges from all these voices is a consistent picture. Wrestling legends believe WWE has traded authenticity for polish, spontaneity for choreography, character-driven narratives for athletic exhibitions, and emotional resonance for corporate-friendly content. These aren't isolated complaints from one disgruntled generation. They're systematic critiques of WWE's fundamental transformation under TKO and Triple H. The legends are telling us that something precious has been lost, something that made wrestling truly special, and they're wondering aloud whether it can ever be recovered. Even the fans are pissed. While wrestling legends provide one critical perspective on WWE's current state, there's an equally important voice that absolutely must be heard: the fans themselves. After all, these are the people who buy the tickets, who subscribe to streaming services, who purchase the merchandise, who dedicate hours of their lives every single week to following WWE programming. And in 2025, those fans are speaking louder than ever before, and what they're saying should terrify anyone who cares about the long-term health of this company. This isn't just scattered complaining on obscure message boards or trolls looking for attention. This is a widespread, organized groundswell of criticism spanning Reddit forums, Facebook groups, YouTube comment sections, and social media platforms. The WWE universe is speaking with remarkable consistency about what's wrong, and their critiques align disturbingly well with what the legends have been saying. The frustration manifests in ways that go far beyond online complaining. Viewership numbers tell a troubling story. SmackDown experienced a staggering 39% decline in January 2025, a drop so severe it can't be explained away by normal fluctuations or seasonal variations. Attendance for live events shows worrying signs, with fans increasingly reluctant to pay dramatically inflated ticket prices for shows that feel repetitive and predictable. Perhaps most tellingly, fan engagement on social media has shifted dramatically from excitement and anticipation to criticism and disappointment. with threads discussing what's wrong with WWE generating far more interaction than threads celebrating what the company is doing right. At the absolute heart of fan frustration is WWE's creative direction, which fans overwhelmingly describe as lazy and non-committal, prioritizing shock value moments designed to generate social media clips over sustained story arcs that build genuine emotional investment. A July 2025 op-ed from Real Rap Entertainment captured this perfectly, highlighting how fans are cheering for heels and booing for faces. Not because the performers are failing, but because the booking is so fickle and inconsistent that alignments become meaningless. When a wrestler turns heel on Monday and then acts like a babyface on Friday, when alliances shift without logical explanation, when victories and losses seem to have no consequences whatsoever, audiences stop investing in the stories because there's no reason to believe anything matters or will pay off in a satisfying way. A Bleacher Report analysis described 2025's WWE product as feeling mid, with storylines constantly reverting to factory settings, meaning that no matter what happens, everything eventually circles back to the same familiar patterns and dynamics. This creates a crushing sense of futility, where nothing truly changes or evolves, where watching becomes a hollow exercise because you know that any interesting developments will eventually be undone in favor of returning to the comfortable status quo. Perhaps nothing exemplifies how WWE has changed more dramatically than the commercialization that has transformed shows into extended advertisements occasionally interrupted by wrestling content. Maven's statement about WWE becoming one big gigantic ad resonated so powerfully with fans because it perfectly captured what they've been experiencing but struggling to articulate, the feeling that they're being sold to rather than entertained, that every segment exists primarily to promote sponsors rather than advance stories or showcase performers. The commercialization takes multiple oppressive forms. There are the obvious sponsorships, Slim Jim branded tables that wrestlers crash through, Cash App briefcases that turn money in the bank into a corporate tie-in, championship matches presented as being brought to you by whatever brand paid the most. But the problem goes so much deeper than just logo placement. It's about how commercial breaks and advertising commitments have fundamentally warped the structure and pacing of WWE programming in ways that destroy the viewing experience. A September 2025 Ringside News report captured particular fan fury over Netflix's ad-free tier somehow still showing commercials during WWE programming, with fans who specifically paid extra to avoid advertisements feeling deceived and disrespected. A 411 Mania piece documented a number of complaints flooding social media after Raw's September 8th broadcast featured commercials despite viewers having subscribed to premium tiers specifically to eliminate them. The pacing problems that result from commercial demands extend beyond just breaks for advertisements. Matches are way too long and feel overly choreographed, according to complaints that also highlighted how ticket prices have jumped 250%, while the quality of the in-arena experience has declined. WWE's current roster structure has created what fans describe as a top-heavy problem, where a handful of established stars receive the overwhelming majority of television time, storyline attention, and promotional push, while talented mid-carders languish with nothing meaningful to do. An October SI.com piece about Samantha Irvin's non-compete clause expanded into broader discussions about contract problems and restrictive agreements that prevent wrestlers from seeking opportunities elsewhere, even when WWE clearly has no meaningful plans for them. A Daily DDT article questioning if WWE is burying LA Knight noted that success for mid-card talents is kept just outside their reach, with wrestlers being built up just enough to keep fans invested, but never actually getting pushed to become legitimate main event players. In August, the Sportster report about Karrion Kross revealed something particularly disturbing. WWE management allegedly told Kross to ignore fan support and stick with their predetermined plans regardless of how audiences were actually responding. If true, this represents a fundamental breakdown in how wrestling is supposed to work. The entire advantage of predetermined outcomes is that bookers can respond to audience reactions and give people what they want. WWE's women's division represents one of the most frustrating contradictions in modern wrestling. A roster loaded with incredible talent capable of delivering show-stealing performances, consistently held back by booking that ranges from lazy to actively counterproductive. A Reddit post praised the women for running the Fed by comprising 32% of all matches, a remarkable achievement showing how central they've become to programming. But that same post criticized the uneven booking that prevents this performance level from translating translating into consistent, compelling storylines. Despite genuine bright spots, roster releases documented how cuts to the women's roster hurt division depth and prompted fans to criticize Triple H's booking of the women's tag team titles. WWE's pay-per-view structure has become another flashpoint of fan frustration, with shows increasingly feeling formulaic, predictable, and lacking the special atmosphere that used to make major events truly unmissable. WrestlePalooza 2025 drew intense disappointment. One Facebook post called WrestlePalooza probably the worst WWE PLE of 2025, highlighting how the event was heavily promoted and hyped, but ultimately underdelivered on its promises. Another report about SummerSlam 2025 documented widespread streaming problems that prevented fans from watching one of WWE's biggest shows, problems particularly galling when people have paid premium prices specifically for the privilege of streaming these events. What emerges from all these specific complaints is a bigger, more troubling picture, a fan base that increasingly feels taken for granted, dismissed, and alienated by a company that seems more interested in pleasing corporate partners and chasing mainstream credibility than in delivering the kind of wrestling product that made them fall in love with WWE in the first place. Kurt Angle defending Triple H amid fan criticism shows that not everyone shares the negative perspective, but the volume and consistency of complaints suggest problems that go way beyond just internet negativity. A Reddit post by a disgruntled fan argued that the downfall from WWE 2024 to 2025 needs to be studied, suggesting that something specific happened during that transition that fundamentally altered the trajectory of the product in negative ways. A July thread poignantly noted, "My passion for WWE is slowly going away again," echoing a sentiment expressed by countless longtime fans who have stuck with the company through multiple rough periods, but now feel their patience and loyalty being tested to breaking points. The legends are speaking out, the fans are revolting, and WWE stands at a crossroads where they must decide whether to listen and course correct, or continue prioritizing corporate metrics while risking the alienation of the hardcore audience that has sustained wrestling through boom periods and downturns alike. The nostalgic yearning. While legends critique and fans complain about WWE's current state, there's another crucial dimension to this conversation that helps explain both the intensity of current disappointment and potential paths forward: the enduring, powerful nostalgia for what many consider professional wrestling's golden age. Even as WWE achieves record Netflix viewership and stages spectacular events like WrestleMania 43 in Saudi Arabia, fans across generations can't shake a profound longing for the good old days of the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression period. These weren't just successful business periods, they were cultural phenomena that made wrestling matter in ways transcending sports entertainment, becoming genuine mainstream cultural touchstones that defined an entire generation's relationship with wrestling. Understanding this nostalgia isn't about dismissing modern wrestling or claiming everything was objectively better in the past. It's about identifying specific elements that made those eras connect so powerfully with audiences, examining whether and how those elements could be adapted for modern wrestling, and ultimately asking crucial questions. Is it even possible to recapture that lightning in a bottle? Or are we chasing something that can only exist in a specific time and context that no longer exists? The Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression succeeded largely because they were born from the Monday Night Wars, intense competition between WWE and WCW that forced both companies to take creative risks, push boundaries, and constantly innovate to win the ratings battle. That competitive pressure created an environment where wrestlers like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Mick Foley, and Edge weren't just athletes performing scripted matches. They were anti-heroes, rebels, and larger-than-life personalities who shattered the fourth wall, bled for their stories, and turned weekly television into musts. The unfiltered edge that made WWE feel like it was genuinely breaking rules and pushing boundaries. This wasn't an era where wrestlers worried about offending sponsors or alienating mainstream audiences. It was a time when WWE actively courted controversy through crotch chops, beer trucks crashing through arenas, profane promos that would never air today, and storylines that deliberately pushed every boundary of acceptable television content. Austin's middle finger to authority became the defining image of a generation. DX's invasions of WCW broadcasts and their constant juvenile humor made them the coolest act in wrestling. The Rock's electrifying promos that mixed mixed humor, meanness, and charisma, created moments that transcended wrestling and entered popular culture. The good news is that unpredictability and edge don't necessarily require profanity or explicit content. They require creative boldness and willingness to surprise audiences. Triple H could theoretically inject more genuine surprise into WWE programming through unexpected title changes on weekly television rather than saving every major moment for pay-per-views. Imagine if championships could change hands on any episode of Raw or SmackDown without advance notice. Suddenly, every week becomes potentially significant rather than just filler between major events. A blueprint that fans seem to like suggests approaches like regular major matches with real advancements to make weekly shows feel important, bringing back stipulation-based special matches like Hell in a Cell to designated events so they feel genuinely special. The key is creating scenarios where outcomes are uncertain and stakes are meaningful, where watching feels necessary rather than optional. The ceiling on full replication exists primarily around sponsors and advertisers who have specific content requirements, preventing WWE from being as edgy as the Attitude Era. But there's substantial room between current sanitized programming and Attitude Era extremes where WWE could operate, a middle ground that respects modern standards while recapturing some of that dangerous, unpredictable energy. The Attitude Era and ruthless aggression thrived on characters that were so vivid, so fully realized, so larger than life that they transcended wrestling and became part of popular culture. These weren't just good wrestlers with cool moves. They were fully developed personas with distinct personalities, motivations, catchphrases, and presentation. Manning in boiler rooms and carrying his disturbing mask. Kane's silent, monstrous presence as The Undertaker's supposedly burned brother. Val Venis, the adult film star whose gimmick was so over the top it became legendary. And everyone's role mattered to the larger story. Unlike modern wrestling's tendency towards solo performers having isolated matches, these stables created interconnected narratives where tag team matches, six-man tags, and faction warfare kept multiple wrestlers relevant and gave every segment connective tissue that made everything feel important. Fans have confessed to drifting away from wrestling after Hulkamania, but falling completely in love during the Attitude Era because of those hated or adored iconic personalities. Modern WWE, with what fans describe as generic jocks who could be playing any sport and just happen to be wrestlers, lacks that emotional intensity and distinctive personality. This is perhaps the area where modern WWE has the most potential for immediate improvement, because creating distinctive characters doesn't require edgy content or changed corporate structures. It requires creative commitment, and he is reviving the lost art of managers for performers who are incredible athletes but lack natural microphone charisma. Forming cross-brand stables that blend different types of performers could recreate the magic of Evolution or the Corporation. Take Braun Breaker's pure athleticism, combine it with Jacob Fatu's intimidating presence, add a charismatic mouthpiece and a technical wizards. WWE just needs the creative courage to commit to building and protecting new factions rather than throwing together random partnerships that dissolve after a few weeks. The old days excelled at long-term storytelling that built emotional investment through sustained, carefully constructed narrative arcs spanning months or even years. Stone Cold's 3-year crusade against Mr. McMahon and corporate authority gave every segment and match meaning within a larger context. Edge and Lita's torrid, controversial relationship that spilled into multiple feuds and created genuine heat. Batista's slow-burn realization that Evolution was holding him back, and his eventual betrayal of Triple H that had been building for nearly a year. A May 2025 analysis from Copyflight distilled storytelling lessons from wrestling's greatest eras, emphasizing concepts like comeback stories with adversity and pointing to feuds like Undertaker vs. Kane as timeless redemption tales that fans still rewatch decades later. An e-wrestling news editorial about viewership drops blamed the decline specifically on half-finished ideas. It trains fans to stop caring about setup and foreshadowing. This might be the area where modern WWE has the clearest path to improvement, because Triple H's own background as a NXT booker demonstrated his ability to craft compelling long-term stories when given creative freedom. Adopting genuine long-term booking that spans multiple pay-per-views and television cycles could work if WWE commits to seeing stories through rather than should be the priority over generic "I want your title" storylines. Blood, chair shots to the head, Hell in a Cell plummets that looked like they genuinely might kill someone. The Attitude Era and ruthless aggression period's physicality created tactile terror that made wrestling feel genuinely dangerous and unpredictable. unpredictable. Mick Foley's legendary reviving stipulation matches like tables, ladders, and chairs with modern safety improvements could work, using gimmicked furniture and padding techniques that look devastating while actually being safer. The Sportster advocates for tag team wrestling with serious brawling elements that echo the Hardys' death-defying TLC classics, showing that with proper preparation and modern safety equipment, WWE could present matches that look devastatingly physical while actually being safer than they appear. The Attitude Era wasn't just successful within wrestling, it was a genuine cultural phenomenon that transcended the industry and became part of mainstream conversation. Austin 316 t-shirts outsold banned merchandise and became genuine fashion statements. DX's invasion angles sparked national headlines. This element actually has substantial potential in the modern era because WWE has access to distribution platforms and media reach that didn't exist during the Attitude Era. Leveraging Netflix for viral clips and strategic crossovers could work brilliantly, creating segments specifically designed to be shared and discussed on social media. Understanding how modern audiences consume content through short clips, the pre-social media environment created mystery and kayfabe protection that's impossible in the age of instant information. But this doesn't mean WWE can't learn from and adapt Attitude Era principles for modern application. A January 2025 YouTube video, The Path Forward, involves hybridizing eras, taking the unpredictability and character work from the Attitude Era, the storytelling depth from ruthless aggression, and blending them with modern athleticism and production values to create something new rather than just recreating the past. Nostalgia absolutely sells. 2025's Attitude Era DLC packs for WWE video games flew off shelves. Legends returning for one-night appearances generate guaranteed rating spikes, and throwback merchandise consistently moves units. But over-reliance on nostalgia risks stunting growth and preventing WWE from building new stars and creating new moments that will become tomorrow's nostalgia. Bleacher Report warned about how excessive nostalgia can actually diminish hard work by modern wrestlers, creating excellent matches and memorable moments, but getting overshadowed by constant references to how things were better in the past. Healthiest approach treats nostalgia as a bridge rather than a destination. Use echoes of the Attitude Era's rebellious spirit to spark interest, but then deliver modern wrestling that stands on its own merits. Blend Stone Cold's anti-authority ethos with Cody Rhodes' earnest heroism to create a post-Attitude hybrid that honors the past while evolving for contemporary audiences. WWE's challenge in 2025 and beyond is honoring its remarkable past without being imprisoned by it. Fans return initially for echoes of what they loved, but they'll only stay if WWE evolves and gives them new reasons to invest emotionally. The legends are right that something has been lost in wrestling's evolution from rebellious art form to corporate product. The fans are right that booking decisions and over-commercialization are alienating the core audience. But the solution isn't simply recreating 1998, it's learning the compelling modern wrestling that respects contemporary realities while recapturing the passion, unpredictability, and authentic emotional resonance that made people fall in love with wrestling in the first place. The good old days were undeniably special, but they can't be the entirety of wrestling's future without becoming a tombstone marking where the industry stopped growing. That's the real challenge facing Triple H and WWE. Not to go backward, but to move forward while carrying the best parts of the past along for the journey. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.